Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hi, I'm Colonie Town Judge Peter Crummey, and welcome to Benchmark. We'll explore a variety of issues involved with our legal system, the justice system, and how they intersect with the citizens of the town of Colonie. Today, we're very fortunate to have a special guest who will be telling us much about the nursing home industry here in the state of New York. I'm very pleased to welcome Carl Young with us today. Carl is president of the New York Association of Home Services for the Aging. And welcome, Carl.
Thank you very much, Peter. I welcome this opportunity to reach out to the community.
And before we begin talking about nursing homes in general, I wanted to have you share with our viewers some of your very significant and prominent background. Currently, you serve as president of the New York Association of Homes and Services for the Aging.
That's right.
But prior to doing that, what else have you done in your very broad life?
Well, thank you. Actually, this is my third, I tell people it's my third adult life. I taught high school history and government in the Binghamton school system from 1965 until 1980. For the last 8 of those years, I was also in the county legislature. And then from 1981 through 88, I was Broome County executive. I was involuntarily retired by the voters in November of 1988, but that has proven to be an opportunity because working with NYASA and the issues that we deal with and the people whom we represent, I feel as though I'm still continuing a life in public service.
And when you say NYASA, that certainly represents the Association of Homes and Services for the Aging that you're now president of. And you've been serving in that capacity since 1989, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. I use the acronym NYASA just because we'd run out of time for your program if I kept saying New York Association of Homes and Services for the Aging every time. So.
Well, that's fine. And we're so happy that you're a Colonie town resident. You are evidence of why Colonie is so great today, because not only do we enjoy lifelong residents, and I'm one of those, but Colonie attracts so many talented people from throughout the country to reside here too, and we're happy to have you here from Broome County to share your experiences and just augment and add to our citizenry here in Colonie. And
Thank you very much. My wife and I really like it here, and the best part of it, notwithstanding all those other good things that you mentioned, is we're only 5 doors away from our only grandchild, although she's about to get a sister, we think, come February. But it's a great experience for us. It was hard to leave Broome County, where we had lived for 40 years, but being up here, the whole capital region is just a great place to live. And as you've indicated, Colonie has an array of really excellent services. It's a nice, safe community, and compared to other areas in the region, the taxes are pretty reasonable.
And certainly can provide a nice environment for many different generations to enjoy the town at the same time, and including some of the nursing facilities that we even enjoy in this county or in this area as well, and where we're probably also members of your association. Why don't you tell us first about the association and what it does?
Okay. Yeah, NYASA is a 46-year-old organization. We are committed to advocating on behalf of not-for-profit and public providers of long-term care. And when I say a member, I mean a nursing home, a senior housing program, a home care program, or anything in the general area of long-term care services. Our primary clientele served by our member organizations are seniors, although we have a handful, including St. Margaret's House, who serve children with lifelong disabilities. But what NYASA does, and we represent about 600 organizations statewide. Half of them are nursing facilities, And the others are senior housing, home care, assisted living, adult care facilities, retirement communities, the whole array of services primarily designed for senior citizens. What we do for them are a variety of things. We have an education division that provides seminars and conferences for all across the field, from directors of nursing to housing managers to financial managers. We have a research division that looks for best practices, try to develop new ideas for improving the quality of care delivery. We are a staff of 55 altogether. We have a for-profit subsidiary that develops products and services on a fee-for-service basis aimed at helping our members do their jobs more efficiently and saving them money. We lobby and advocate. We do a lot of public information. 10 of us are registered as lobbyists because we have a great deal of interaction with the legislature and the administration, trying to influence laws, not really to benefit providers, but to benefit senior citizens. Our clientele, when all is said and done, are the senior citizens all across this state who have a lot of very critical care needs, and for whom I would argue we've got more to do because our system isn't really there yet. I think New York's delivery system is unmatched anywhere else in the country. But we have a rapidly aging population, and we have some really critical issues to attend to. And we've got a long way to go before any of us can feel cocky about our position.
Carl, locally too, your members include the Albany County Nursing Home, the Teresian House, Daughters of Sarah, just to name a few, for our viewers to know how you're touching everyone even locally. Tell me this, currently, and for the benefit of those with us today, what are the options for seniors as they consider housing and residential facilities outside of their homes or apartments?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and I don't think the public really has a full appreciation for just what all the services are. I think when we think in terms of aging services, the first thought that comes to mind is nursing home, when in fact the nursing home is, of course, a key part of a continuum of services. But if you ask people what they would like, and as you and I get a little grayer, I'm well ahead of you on that path, but what would we like for our own needs as we look down the road? Well, independence is the first thing that we want to maintain. But sometimes that house that we've lived in for 30 years is just bigger than we can manage. One of the critical areas of shortage is in senior housing, places where people can have, somebody else will mow the lawn and fix the roof, but you don't necessarily need a lot of health care. Independent housing, or housing into which we can bring home care services if an individual's needs call for it, is in acute short supply. It's not unique in our county. It's an area of the long-term care system that's being, frankly, overlooked. Neglected would be a more harsh term, but it hasn't been given proper attention at the policy level in the state, in the nation. So we need to, A, let people know more about what the services are, who is providing them in the community. Your local office for aging is often a good reference point for at least finding out what's available in the community. And of course, our organization is happy to provide that kind of information as well.
Are there things that we can do to encourage our senior population to actually stay in their home? What can be done to help facilitate that? Many times they may believe that they just can't handle the home anymore, but it may be the best place to be.
Yeah. For a lot of seniors, there's a fine line where staying in your own home, it can also be isolating. If you, let's say your neighbors have the people you've known the longest time, and I reflect on my own mother's experience growing up in Camillus outside of Syracuse. As time went on, she was the oldest one in her neighborhood. And while there's interaction with some of the young people, the house got really big. What made things difficult for us was there weren't adequate housing or assisted living services in the community. So mom stayed in the house in which I grew up, And it was a real challenge for her and for us as a family, because I'm in Albany, my brother's in Houston, and the services weren't there. I think that one of the things that we need to do is look to the Office for Aging. There are a number of providers and organizations are developing to develop those kinds of services, home delivery services. People who come, a young man who used to work for us but was very handy and did a lot of work for Habitat for Humanity, has gone off and formed his own business, helping people make their homes handicapped accessible, so that the stairs aren't quite the barrier they used to be. Those kinds of services need to be further developed. But again, the public awareness of their existence needs to be enhanced too, and whether it's public service announcements or programs like this, which will help people think beyond just the traditional line of thought.
What types of housing opportunities other than one's own home and enhancements that can be made for one's own home are made available for our seniors?
There are a number of different levels of senior housing. There's a federal program called the 202 program. The Catholic Diocese in this region has been very active in developing. DePaul Management is the management company from St. Vincent de Paul. In fact, they have some programs here in Colonie as well.
That's correct.
Teresian House has developed the Avila, which is a housing complex right behind Teresian House on their property there. So you have the 202 program is basically for people with low income. The programs are subsidized by the federal government, and the programs that are most successful are those that are able to provide a service coordinator on site or as a part of the system, so that they help me make determinations as to do I need to get transportation help or arrange for a home care agency perhaps to pay occasional visits and things like that. But you have basically 202 housing, and then you have market rate housing for seniors. And again, your Office for Aging or our office would be glad to give people reference. Before we leave, I should probably give the phone number for NIASA as well.
And that's fun. Why don't we go ahead and do that right now? How would we do that? How would they contact your office?
Our office is at 150 State Street. I tell people we're a pitching wedge from the Capitol. Golfers will understand that it means we're fairly close. And our phone number is 518-449-2707. And we'll be glad to make referrals to any of our members, or if necessary, we can direct people to whatever state or local agency might give them the best advice.
Well, it's a tremendous resource that you're making available too, because obviously you have an obligation to service your own 600 members, but making it available to anybody to provide further information is a big help for all of our seniors here in Colonie as well. Many find themselves thinking of nursing home or actually participating in a nursing home. And we hear a lot about Medicaid and how those formulas may be changing and altering the landscape. Are these Medicaid changes that we've often heard about have an impact on nursing care?
Yes, and there's a certain risk attached to Medicaid, quite honestly. Medicaid pays for about between 75 and 80% of the resident days in nursing homes. They are far and away, the bulk of the people in our nursing homes are Medicaid dependent. The problem is Medicaid reimbursement doesn't cover the cost of care. So we look to other elements. For instance, the Medicare program pays at a higher rate, but Medicare does not pay for long-term care. That's one of the great misunderstandings that we have, and I think it's almost universal. I saw a poll not too long ago that more than 70% of the public believes that Medicare will take care of long-term care. Medicare will only pay for up to 100 days of long-term care, and it has to follow a hospitalization. Medicare is really more available on the nursing home side for rehab services. The people who and nursing homes are very active in the field of rehabilitative services. I think there's a stereotype that the nursing home is simply a place where you go to live out your life, when in fact We have tremendous turnover in our nursing homes. As people come in, they get their hip replacement rehabilitated, or some injury or a stroke that they've had. But the rehab services, we send them back to their homes or whatever other setting they have. Medicare is a better payer than Medicaid. Every year we go through a severe budget fight over proposed cuts in Medicaid payments to nursing homes. And over the time that I've been here, those cuts have had a cumulative amount of over $4 billion. And the consequence of this is that it places the seniors' care at risk, because facility programs, the providers, don't have any surplus cash. 60% of the not-for-profits are losing money on operations, which means they're having to make that up through foundations or other ancillary services to subsidize their losses in their nursing home.
The impact of those cuts, has it caused over time a reductions in beds, or have there been other ways to retool in order to provide opportunities for our seniors?
A little bit of both. There have been about 38 closures around the state in the last 4 years. And in some cases, they're dreadfully unfortunate, because in Cobleskill, for instance, just earlier this year, a facility closed. It was the only one within a 60 or 70 mile radius, which means that the 60 people who lived there now had to be relocated 60 or more miles away from their families, from their support networks, from their actual home, which is what the nursing home had become. Plus probably the 70 or 80 people who worked there also lost their jobs. It's because the payment system was simply not adequate to cover costs. So on the one hand, we've had closures, which affects access to care and services. And another feature that we see is, I think we believe that we're still able to give basic good care in our facilities. But what's missing is the quality of life takes a hit. The distinction between quality of life and quality of care is kind of like meeting the minimum standards, making sure that people are clean and they get their meals. But my wife, who is a retired nursing home administrator, is a reminder to me that just because you're getting by doesn't mean you're doing what you want to do. She said that the nurse aide who used to take the time to talk with an agitated resident with dementia no longer can do that, because they've been forced to cut back staff due to lack of resources. And so that aide who might have chatted with that person who is agitated has to run and answer the call bell, because there isn't enough staff to let him or her stay with that resident. So I would make the case that we're jeopardizing the quality of life for our residents, because the bulk of your expenses at a nursing home are in staff. 70 to 75% of your expenses are in staff. And when your resources are cut, as they have been with the Medicaid cuts, you've got no place to cut. I mean, National Grid isn't going to give you a discount on your electricity, and the food providers aren't going to give you a special discount. Staffing has become just about the only area of opportunity to, quote unquote, save money.
Carl, do you find that other states or surrounding states to New York are looking at these issues differently, so as to encourage the development of senior housing and nursing home care, which is actually an industry in and of itself, and could lead to fewer beds in New York in the future?
New York is a little behind the curve in development of assisted living, for instance, which is kind of an intermediate level of care. And as I mentioned earlier, senior housing is in dreadfully short supply. Other states are experiencing some of the same problems, but New York has been, I think, as I said, behind the curve with assisted living. We're way behind the curve in terms of developing retirement communities, particularly retirement communities for people in the middle class range.
Why is that? Is there a statutory impediment, or we just don't have the investment, or?
Well, a big problem has been New York's penchant for regulation as a state. And I've often said New York never met a regulation they didn't like and wouldn't embellish if they got the chance.
Right.
New York was slow in developing life care communities, which are a model of care in which you pay a front-end entry fee and then you pay a monthly rent for independent living. You receive a number of services, a congregate meal a day, or there's usually a menu of services that are part of what the rent will be. But the entry fee that you pay is there to cover your nursing home costs if you ever need nursing care. And when you die, or if you leave or let's say if you die, 90% of that money, that front-end money, goes back to your estate. If you choose to leave, then you get that money back. But the entry fee is a kind of an insurance against needing nursing home care. Now the beauty of this is none of those people are ever going to go on Medicaid. Pennsylvania has over 100 retirement communities, most of them targeted at middle-income people. What we're finding is a lot of the people who are on Medicaid didn't start out poor. But they have either spent down their resources or in some cases they have divested those assets to access Medicaid more quickly. But if we had a greater array of retirement communities, a greater array of options, people wouldn't need to dip into the Medicaid program as extensively as we have. No other state is as dependent on Medicaid as New York is. The national average is about 60 to 65% of the residents on Medicaid. New York is 75 to 80%.
Now, many of our viewers have heard about long-term care insurance. How does that fit into our nursing home or nursing home opportunities?
The more we can encourage people to purchase long-term care insurance, the better off they will be, because it'll give them more options. And frankly, it takes pressure off the Medicaid system. That is our biggest risk in nursing homes is over-reliance on Medicaid, because the state has limited resources and so forth and so on. Long-term care insurance, I think the long-term care insurance industry has to step up as well. The products are very expensive. If I could wave a magic wand, I would just encourage everybody to start at age 40 when the premiums are manageable and indeed very reasonable. If you wait till you're 65, the premiums are going to be that much higher, and for a lot of folks they'll be more than they'll be able to handle. I think we need tax incentives. The state has pretty good tax incentives actually for the purchase of long-term care insurance. Our federal government still doesn't get it. We really need the federal government to provide the same kind of encouragement to think long-term, and again, the insurance industry needs to develop products that are more appealing to the public as well.
Is there a central area where a senior or a family member who's contemplating some type of housing for another family member, but there's so many different options, who could they meet with in order to get a better handle on what options are available and see which one would fit their family member? Is there any central location for that type of information?
It's spotty. Again, I come back to the local offices for aging, many of which do a very good job. The state is pursuing a concept of a single point of entry. We have reservations about something like that being too micromanaging, but a single point of information. They're talking about the program will be called New York Connects, and it will be it won't be an 800 number, it'll be like a 311 number or something like that people can call and get information about what's included in, let's say, the services of assisted living. How is assisted living different from enriched housing? How are they different from nursing homes? And they'll be able to get that kind of information, and then they'll also find out what organizations and within what kind of a geographic range would be able to meet their needs.
And you would support that central point of information?
Absolutely.
I think it's imperative as well. There's too many people are confronted with the issue and they don't know where to turn. You've been nice enough to, of course, suggest that anybody could contact your office too. But in the end, the issue is even broader than your association
Oh, yes.
needs to speak to. It's a reference point that should be available to all our citizens. And you've mentioned too, Carl, and we're here with Carl Young today, the president of the New York Association of Homes and Services for the Aging. And Carl, you've mentioned a variety of different opportunities that our seniors could enjoy. If you could reconstruct from the get-go the opportunities for senior housing, would you do it differently than it appears to everyone today?
Right. Yeah, I think we've kind of evolved from a hospital model of care, and because if you look at the nursing home, the models of 20 years ago, they look like hospitals. Long corridors and at least 2 to a room, sometimes 3 or 4, which is, when you stop and think of it, in my later years, do I really want to have, especially if I'm declining, do I want some stranger to be my primary witness to that? The fellow who was in the fellow who had my job in our national association a number of years ago used to say that semi-private was his favorite oxymoron, which when you stop and think about it. And new models of the nursing home are evolving, but we started out at the nursing home as this is where we'll take care of old people. If I was to start from scratch, if we were doing it all over today
Sure.
with a clean slate like our table here, I'd start with senior housing. We'd develop congregate housing settings where people could have social interaction with people of their own age. I wouldn't isolate these out in some place where they can't have interaction with younger people too. I think we miss something when we segregate our people, whether it's by age or any other category. But interspersing senior housing with middle-class housing. There's a phenomenon known as a NORC, naturally occurring retirement community, which are often apartment buildings where people have simply aged in. And so you have the folks who've lived there for 30 or 40 years have my color hair, and people who may have lived there for only 10 or 15 have your color hair, and then we have other folks who still have middle-aged or middle children. And that's a concept that we're seeing expanding more. But I'd start with housing, and I'd make sure we developed home care at the same time, because if people want that kind of independence, they still are going to need periodically, they'll have health episodes and they'll want somebody to come in and be able to take care of them. Maybe they break a hip and have to get rehab, and then they come back home and get physical therapy or something like that. So you want home care services to be available. Next, I would go to what I'll call the intermediate level of care, people who don't need skilled nursing but can't live independently either. That housing complex that we just built for them will no longer satisfy all of their needs. So assisted living is kind of the intermediate level, or adult care facilities, where people still live in a congregate setting, but they have more help available. In assisted living, you'll find an LPN that will probably be on duty at least a part of the time, or they will have direct access to a provider of nursing services if they need them. The nursing home, I believe, is always going to be a part of what we need in our system, and I would make them look differently. If you see what's happening in the newer construction of nursing homes, there's a lot more single rooms. The design, they've gotten away from the long corridors, and at the same time, you need to reserve that place where the rehabilitation services can also be performed. So the system would look quite different. We made a terrific mistake, I think, during the 90s. We built over 20,000 new nursing home beds in New York State, and only 150 slots of adult care facilities and assisted living. So we've weighted the system far too heavily on the nursing home component, and we need to readjust the weighting and the balancing of that. But we can't do it overnight. And as I've said in any number of budget hearings, you can't cut your way to reform. You need to build your way to reform.
Carl, it's certainly been our pleasure today to have you join us and tell us about the nursing home industry and senior care. There are a variety of options. Sometimes it's hard for our seniors to find out what they are, and you've begun to let us know to some degree what is available for our citizens, and certainly made yourself available as well so that they could contact you either through the phone number you provided, or they can do it through the Colonie Town Library, and we'll make sure to route their questions to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Young, President of the New York Association of Homes and Services for the Aging. We're certainly fortunate that you joined us today.
Thank you.
And I'm Judge Peter Crummey. Thank you for joining me on Benchmark.